Somewhere right now, someone is telling you that walking away makes you a bad person, a bad spouse, a bad son or daughter, a bad Christian, a bad Muslim, a bad whatever you were raised to be. And some part of you believes them, which is exactly why you're still standing in a situation you already know is hurting you. This video is for that specific kind of stuck. You already know the practical case for protecting yourself. What nobody's given you is permission to actually do it when the voice telling you to stay isn't coming from the toxic person. It's coming from your own conscience, your family, your faith. Everyone who taught you that loyalty means enduring no matter what it costs you. Here's the real question underneath all of that guilt. Does choosing yourself actually make you selfish? Or does the obligation to endure indefinitely only ever protect the person doing the harm? Because those two things get taught as the same virtue, and they are not the same thing at all. Let's look at where this comes from. Most people weren't taught to set boundaries. They were taught to be patient, to forgive, to be the bigger person, to stay long-suffering through things that should have ended years earlier. That teaching isn't wrong in itself. Patience and forgiveness are real virtues. But somewhere along the way, be patient quietly turned into tolerate anything indefinitely. And those are not the same instruction. One asks you to be generous. The other asks you to disappear. Machiavelli's political realism was built on a principle most moral teaching leaves out entirely. Intention matters, but consequences matter just as much. A prince who stays loyal to an advisor actively working against him isn't practicing virtue. He's practicing self-destruction, and calling it patience doesn't change the outcome. The same logic applies to you. Staying in a situation that's actively costing you isn't automatically the moral high ground just because leaving feels selfish. Sometimes staying is the actual harm to yourself and to the people depending on you being whole. Virtue was never about enduring for its own sake. It was about acting when the situation actually called for it. Here's the test that cuts through the guilt. Ask what the endurance is actually accomplishing. If staying is protecting a relationship that's genuinely repairable, where both people are working towards something better, that's different from staying, because leaving would disappoint someone or break a rule you were handed without ever choosing it yourself. One is investment, the other is just obligation dressed up as virtue, and only one of them is sustainable. There's a second layer to this worth naming directly, because it's the part that makes people hesitate even after they've made peace with leaving. You might worry that setting a boundary, going quiet, or creating distance will hurt the other person more than they deserve, that you're being cruel by protecting yourself. But consider this. It isn't healthy for anyone to have another person completely obsessing over their reactions, needing constant access, unable to function without controlling how you respond. Distance isn't automatically cruelty. Sometimes it's the only thing that actually forces a real change, because nothing changes in a system where the person causing harm never experiences a consequence. This costs something either way, and it's worth being honest about that, instead of pretending the answer is E. Choosing yourself might mean disappointing people who genuinely believe you're doing something wrong. It might mean sitting with guilt that doesn't fully go away just because your reasoning is sound. That's real, and it doesn't make the decision wrong. Growth rarely comes with everyone's approval attached to it, and Machiavelli never promised the prince universal approval either, only that the outcome would justify the difficulty of the choice. So here's what changes for you. The next time guilt shows up and tells you that protecting yourself makes you selfish, ask what the alternative is actually costing. Endless patience for something that never improves isn't virtue. It's just harm you've agreed to absorb quietly, and calling it loyalty doesn't make it hurt any less. You're allowed to choose yourself. That was never the same thing as choosing cruelty. It just finally feels unfamiliar enough that guilt mistakes the two. That's the permission this entire series was really building toward all along.